This lecture is about the change process, leadership and professional development. And I like this cartoon. As we go through this change, I expect each of you to be innovative, supportive, and resourceful and do exactly as I say. Sometimes we have the best ideas. Sometimes we created a professional learning community. Sometimes we've been able to develop trust in relationships with our teachers. And yet, if we fall back into that top-down model, we can kind of risk everything. And as we deal with, say, change, we deal with people's reactions. I think these images kind of show how each of us can respond to change. Change is not easy, really, for anyone. If change is so good, I'll let you go first. That's a pretty good model. My cousin Vinny, as Vinny goes down south and has to defend his nephew, there's this sense that he's met a structure that's immovable. And sometimes that will happen with us. He's trying to make this change and adjust to see things in a certain way. If you've seen the movie, you know how it ends. But most of the movie is this sense of meeting an immovable force. Machiavelli in 1532, when he wrote The Prince, talked about that change. That sense of introducing a new order of things can be so threatening. And that once that happens, people will put up the big defense boundaries and the invader will be attacked. There's something wrong with them rather than something wrong with staying in the one place and becoming stagnant. So there's a whole psychology and emotions of change, and Robert Evans has really talked about that. I tried what you said, but there are still people who refuse and some who just don't get it. What do I do after I've done everything right? And so it lets us know we can do all the right things, but there's a way that we have to present this to so many different kinds of people who have very different ways of responding to change. And so we have to try a lot of different ways of helping people get on board. And I think that we can talk about those types of people in the change process. We've met those people. We are those people. A number of authors have written about change, especially first, second, and third order change. The first order change is kind of new packaging. Let's spruce up. What is this going to look like? Sometimes a new leader will come in and paint the corridors, get new lockers, new desk, freshen things up. So when people come in, they see something different. And then nothing wrong with a fresh environment, but this is really just still a first level of change. The second level of change is kind of reordering things. Perhaps it's changing the daily schedule, how classes are ordered. We've talked about moving the start of school to 8 in the morning. Now that's kind of a second order change. Maybe that will create a lot of change. Maybe our students will come in and be more fresh. But it's still not changing at what is called really the third order change. And that's really where there's no boundaries, where you can almost start again, starting with what we want to accomplish, then working back with what we need to do, what the school needs to look like, how we need to operate in order to make that our hopes and dreams, come into fruition. Examples of first, second, and third order change. Smaller class sizes, 90-minute blocks, PLCs, team teaching. Where would you put these, these different aspects and challenges? Would you put them in first or second or third order change? And maybe there's a way that PLCs are done that could be first order, second order, or third order change. And so I think some of them could fall into a number of different categories depending on how they're used and working. Fullan talks about in schools, the problem is not the absence of innovation, but the presence of too many disconnected, episodic, piecemeal projects. Again, it's that sense starting with the end in mind and kind of working backwards rather than having this idea, putting this here. How does someone really think strategic? And then how does that help obviate from just little projects here, there, and everywhere that really don't change much? Kurt Lewin really talked about models and dynamics of planned change. And there's a sense in how you take your current structure. If you want to move into something new, it's got to be melted down and almost recast. Can we imagine that happening? Can we imagine that happening at our schools? Because that's part of the process. How to take a block, turn it into a cone. You really need to melt it down and to recast. These are big projects. Todd Whitaker, some of us have been reading his book, but he has 9 strategies in leading school change. How do you get everybody on board? Well, first of all, you have to start at the beginning. Identify the change. And then make sure the first exposure is great. So how is that change rolled out? Determine who matters most. Who do you get on board? Who are the people who are going to carry this forward? Find the entry points. How can people be invited into this? Reduce the resistance. How can people talk and meet and talk about some of the issues, kind of get those resolved before moving forward? Harnessing the power of emotion. Of course, you can have negative emotions that kind of help bring people down, but can you harness those people who are positive? People say, yes, I've seen this happen elsewhere. I think we can make this happen here, and help move this forward with a positive energy. Look past buy-in to action. And so that can happen. People can buy in, but how do they become more active participants than just buying in? As change takes place, how do we reinforce that new behavior? What are the accolades? How does a teacher receive support for a change behavior? And then to take all of these things and put them together and to somehow create a change that's lasting and supported. Think about your school. What change needs to happen there? How would you make that happen? Perhaps some of the ideas we've seen in this lecture can help give us ideas on how to make change, bring change, be change agents in our own schools.